So far in my World of Warcraft journey, I have leveled 3 entire characters, my warrior, my mage, and my beautiful druid. Each having their own entirely different leveling experience. I also decided to try out the horde side of things with my rogue, which has been great so far. However, we have put the horde adventure on pause for now because I recently gained the need for a hunter. But what could I possibly need a hunter so badly for? Well, that's a story for another time. So for now, it's time to return to the Alliance once more as I attempt to level my first ever hunter alongside my trusty pet, Gerald. Last time, we had to go through what is probably the most miserable part of leveling a character in WoW Classic, which is going from levels 40 to 45, constantly running out of things to do and being forced to spam dungeons that we'd already done tens of times. However, by the might of Gerald himself, we were mysteriously gifted, because when I logged on, I was shocked to find that my character had gotten to level 45 overnight. How mysterious. So I took that blessing and I powered my way through Tanaris and Feralis, and of course managed to obtain my carrot on a stick from Zul'Farrak. But with all of that nonsense out of the way, it's time for us to start making our final push to level 60, which is why the goal for today is to get to level 55. But before all of that, we have something important to attend to. We must appoint a name to my mount. And well, you guys came up with some very good ones, so that's why I would like to introduce you all to Harold. Logging on for the day, we were sitting at a very comfortable almost level 48, and we had so many leveling options, so many different zones, but also having a couple of dungeons at my disposal. And I know that I still have some stuff left in Tanaris, and I did say that I would go back, but not right now, as I decided to go to the Hinterlands. So I took myself over to South Shore and began making that very short run. Even when we were taking our first steps into the zone, I was quite surprised. Is it just me, or is this zone extra, I don't know, bushy? So I made my way up to Airy Peak, and would you believe I actually grabbed the flight point this time? And I know there isn't a massive amount of quests here, as there was a grand total of 3, but XP is XP. Now I gotta say, but I don't remember this zone looking so good. In my head, I remembered it being slightly grey, but it's actually a fantastic woodland style zone, and this honestly might have became one of my favourite zones aesthetically. But for our first quest, we needed to obtain 5 troll tribal necklaces, which obviously drop from the troll mobs located around the zone. And well, I had something else to do at this part anyway, so I cleared out every single troll. The other thing that I had here was to check cages, which if you just used your eyes, you can quite clearly see has nothing inside. I then went to the very center of the zone where I found another troll infested camp, and I cleared out that one as well before locating the third and final cage, which you can still see through. I then moved to the east of the zone for our third and final quest, which was to kill some slimes, the perfect quest for a fantasy RPG game. Now this one was quite difficult because we needed 10 green sludge but also 10 jade oozes, and there were hundreds of the green sludges running around but only a couple of jade oozes. So I cleared out every single one and then moved to the north where I was able to find another massive group of slimes, and I just so happened to notice that there was a chest way off in the back, and me being the massive loot goblin that I am, I wanted to see what was inside. So I cleared out all the mobs, which was great since I got another of the 3 jade oozes done. I then opened up the chest and it had a weapon called Gutbuster inside. What is with this character and finding amazing guns? Now I didn't immediately equip it, because I wanted to check the price of it on the auction house first, and I know that I have an add-on that does tell me, but sometimes it is very inaccurate. So I quickly logged on to Cat and it was 25 gold. Definitely not a bad price, but to be honest, I kinda wanted to use a bow, since a night elf using a gun just doesn't sound or look right, so I just held on to it for now. So I quickly finished Slime Murder and returned to Airy Peak to turn in, and we were only given one quest after the initial ones, which which was to search the Altar of Zul. So I took myself over there only to find 2 big scary elite mobs. However, there was a gnome here who was trying to get the mallet for Zul'Farrak. So we teamed up and we attempted it together. And at first we weren't sure if 2 people was going to be enough. However, Gerald is of course the single strongest being in the known universe, and we were able to take down the first elite mob and then run away. And then it was a simple case of doing the same thing for the second mob. And of course, doing that allowed us to get the sacred mallet. So I decided to stick around with the gnome for a bit and get the mallet for myself. So me and the gnome found ourselves a pet rogue, and we all went over to the Altar of Zul, which was swarming with elite mobs. And we started by trying to sneak around the mobs and pulling only select ones at a time, but eventually we just decided to hop on our mounts and beeline it for the altar. But when we got here, there was actually a party of horde that had just finished clearing everything out, which was great for us, and they didn't even attack us. We all just claimed our mallet, and we could then make our grand escape by falling over a waterfall. So a bit of a detour, but it did get us a little extra chunk of XP, so I think it was worth it. Now the follow-up quest wanted me to go to the Blasted Lands. However, I didn't want to do that, and the quest after the Blasted Lands quest would be too high for me anyway. So instead, I opened my map and began thinking about where to go next. But before that, I had to do something with this gun that I had found. So I was browsing the auction house and I found this bow. Now at the time, my thought process was purple costing 20 gold. This would be awesome. So I purchased it and then I listed my gun and then made my way back over to Tanaris, and I started off by visiting this goblin NPC to turn in and accept another quest. And I then headed over to the Dune Mall Ogre area, and I realized almost immediately my very big mistake. While the bow was cool and all, it was extremely fast, which is not good because we run out of arrows way too quickly and it messes with the scaling of the abilities or something like that. Point is, our DPS had significantly fallen because of it. But I just thought that since we had a bag full of arrows, I would just quest through Tanaris with the bow and we could then come up with a solution later. So the Dune Mall quests really weren't anything special, murder some ogres, but we also had to kill a mini-boss called Gormarok the Ravager, who also really wasn't anything special. And since I was here, I went over to the bug hives to kill bugs and collect centipar insect parts. Now if you asked me a couple months ago, I would probably say that this is quite cool. However, since farming for both Earthstrike and Might of Cenarius and running AQ40 every single week, the bug theme is starting to wear out just a little. But after that, I went down to the very southwest area where we needed to slay some living mutant plants. And obviously we were doing it for XP, but also for Noggin Fogger. Because is your character really complete if you don't have Noggin Fogger? And whilst I was here, I grouped up with a fellow hunter, and weirdly, he had made the exact same mistake with the bow that I had. Glad to know that all hunters have room temperature IQ. So we finished up plant killing together, and then we patiently waited for a turtle apparently for some escort quest that I had no idea about. But after waiting for a while, we both decided to go our separate ways. Now one of the few quests that I still had to complete was to gather 30 Gazridian ornaments, little artifacts that were buried in the sand. And these were pretty much everywhere, all over the zone. However, looking at my map, I saw that there seemed to be a small part with loads of them spawning next to each other. So obviously, I went there, and it was the ruins of some building that was surrounded by ogres. So I killed those ogres, mainly just for some extra XP, and I was able to get every single artifact that we needed. So my quest log was pretty much completed at this point. However, there was one quest left, and that was the chicken escort quest. And if I'm not mistaken, after this escort quest, we then needed to escort the chicken in the Hinterlands. So my thought process was to complete this first part and then take the 2 quests that I had back to the Hinterlands. However, 4 quest mobs spawned to attack us, and there was loose mobs getting pulled, and sadly, my chicken died. Well, that's no big deal, I can just restart it. So I quickly returned to Gadgetsan to turn in, and I deleted the chicken item by mistake. I even went and had a look at item restoration, and sadly, I don't think you can restore quest items. So I just had to continue with my second round of quest, which was just the one. We had to venture into one of the bug hives and find someone's surveying gear. And instead of actually pulling and killing the mobs, I decided to just run through them and then feign death before I died. And I think I might have developed some kind of trauma with these hives. Even the look of this thing sent shivers down my spine. The thought of having to mindlessly farm out these Silithus combat quests sends fear throughout my entire body like no other. So after taking the long entrance like an idiot into the hive, I was able to locate what we needed and could now feign death my way out again, and then turn in the quest. And after that, we were done. For now. We might come back later, but I don't know yet. But for now, it was time to find somewhere else to explore for a while. And what better place than Searing Gorge? So obviously, I didn't have the flight point there yet, so I flew to Lochmoden and went through the Badlands. Actually, I don't know if there is any other entrance to Searing Gorge. Now, entering the zone, I know that there were some quests to our left, but I decided to go past them for now and get to Thorium Point first, mainly because I feared that I would forget about the flight point. Now once I had done that, I was actually going to go straight back to those other quests that we passed, since they were lower level than the Thorium Point ones. However, I got a message from a person asking if I wanted to do the elite quests, and well, I probably wouldn't get any better opportunity to do them, so of course I joined them. We made our way inside of the giant cave, and the place was filled with dark iron taskmasters and slavers, which was alright because we actually did need to kill a big chunk of them for another one of the regular quests. So we cleared through all of those for a good 10 minutes until we found Overseer Maltorius, and since there was 3 of us, we were able to nuke him down pretty quickly, at the expense of Gerald of course. We could then pick up the piece of paper that was sat on the bench, and that was the elite quests done. And we were making our way out, and well, we all had the Incendosaurus quest, so we decided to jump down and do that whilst we were here, which was an incredibly easy quest. Run around and kill 20 Incendosaurs, which is quite a few to be fair, but the respawn rate on these things is insanely fast for whatever reason. The other thing that we had to do here was hop down to the very bottom and kill fire elementals for Heart of Fire and golems for golem oil, and apart from that taking a while, it was completely fine. We then made our way back up top and finished off slaying the war golems. We also attempted to loot the smithing tire, I think that's how it's pronounced, but after running around aimlessly for 10 minutes, we decided to do a quick turn in. And at this point it was getting quite late, so I said thank you to my friends and I logged out for the day. But when I logged back on the following day, I wasted no time and got to work on the only quest left in my quest log, which was to get the stupid tire thing. And let me tell you, this quest is broken, because there's only about 4 mobs that can drop it, and the thing just never wanted to drop. So I ran around for 15 minutes and nothing. That was until I saw in the chat that someone wanted to do the other elite quest that was here. We needed to go into this little cave that was once again swarming with elite mobs. Since there was only 2 of us though, it was actually quite difficult, but at the expense of Gerald's life about 8 times, we were able to get that done. So I returned to the quest giver and he began to conjure a torch thingy. But before I did that quest, I returned to the smithing guys again for another 15 minutes, and once again, no tire. Now the torch quest was actually an elite quest. However, with the help of Gerald distracting the elite mob, I could just sneak past and do what I needed to do. So I went back to the torch guy to turn in, and then made my way back over to the southeast to get started on those quests that I skipped earlier. And strangely, the quests were coming from an outhouse looking thing. Turns out the Dark Iron had locked someone inside and we needed to teach those Dark Iron a lesson. And the other thing we had here was to escort a dwarf back to Ironforge. And we ended up getting swarmed multiple times by mobs, but thanks to Gerald and his infinite reservoir of power, they were no match for us. And not long after, our dwarf gets sniped from a rock. Quite sad actually, but all I could do now was return to murdering those geologists. And I did kill all of the ones that we needed, but unfortunately to turn it in, we needed to get silk cloth, which I didn't have. So I kept hold of the quest for now, and maybe we could come back later. And the only quest left now was that stupid smithing thing. And I'm not even kidding, I ran back and forth here for over an hour and a half. And honestly, you should have heard the sigh of release when it finally dropped. With Searing Gorge now finished and completed, mostly, I kinda ran into the same issue that I did last time, where I didn't have any zone to go to. I mean, there was a couple of loose quests lying around, but I wanted somewhere where I could get a nice big chunk of XP and reach level 51, and what better place than Maraudon. But before I did that, I made a quick stop in the Hinterlands to complete the next part of the Noggin Fogger chain. We simply needed to jump into this small pond and pick up a mushroom mushroom. I could then return to Tanaris and turn in the quest, and now I could buy as much noggin fogger as I could possibly carry, which I didn't do, and instead went to Theramore to pick up one of the Maraudon quests, and then went to Desolus to do the same thing. And with my quest log now filled up with dungeon quests, it was time to actually run the dungeon itself. And I don't remember Maraudon ever being so difficult to find a group for, because I waited for a while, and in the end I wasn't even able to find a quest run and had to settle for what is known as a princess run. So we all made our way down and took the portal inside. So Maraudon is easily one of, if not my favourite dungeon in the entire game. This place looks phenomenal. Every section of this place brings those bright fluorescent colours, and the dungeon is so big, it's like its own little mini zone. And apart from the fact that Maraudon is completely taken over by the Mafia now, you can still farm some pretty solid gold by farming elemental earth and ghost mushrooms. Plus, if you're lucky enough, you can get some epics such as the Edgemaster's handguards, which can go as high as 1,000 gold each. Now pair all that with the fact that there is 9 bosses, all of which hold some pretty sick hunter loot. However, we will talk about that later, because for now we are in a princess run, which means we skip over every boss in the dungeon and only go for the last one, Princess Theradras, aka your mum. Now people do this mainly so that warriors can get their first piece of pre-base loot, which is of course the Blackstone ring. We are doing it for XP of course, but also because I quite like the bracers of the Stone Princess, a very nice bracer that should be uncontested by other players. And since we are a hunter, we are quite valuable for this fight, mainly due to Princess's Fart Cloud mechanic, which deals quite a lot of AoE damage to players close by. But we do get her down, and sadly, no ring or bracer. But we got a little chunk of XP, so that's at least something. And since we are right here, we also decided to jump down into the water and kill Rotgrip. Now he doesn't hold nearly as much loot as Princess, but he does have the chance to drop a fantastic pair of boots, the Albino Croc Scale boots. Offering 20 agility, there is very little other pieces of gear that come even close to being this good for us. So we get him down, and sadly, no boots. And afterwards, I returned to Nigel's Point to turn in the Kill Princess quest, where I was able to get myself a very nice bow. Now I don't think it's better than my Gutbuster gun that I found, but like I said, a night elf using a gun just doesn't seem right. So I decided to switch to the bow instead, which is also quite important for another piece of gear that we might be able to get inside of Maraudon. So once again, I patiently waited for a quest run, but sadly I could only get a princess run. However, this time no one had the Scepter of Celebris, meaning we had to enter through the purple portal, which is great for us since there would be more mobs, and more mobs means more XP. But it's also good because of the boss Lord Viletongue, because he can drop the Infernal Trickster leggings, which would give us 20 agility, but also +4 to bows, which if you haven't figured out, that's why I wanted to use the bow that we got. But we get him down, and sadly, no legs. We also decided to take down Celebris the Cursed, but sadly we did not have the quest for him since we hadn't gone over to the orange side yet. But we then jumped down the waterfall and we are back to where we started on the first run, and we clear through the small amount of mobs down to Princess, and I gotta say, our tank on this run was unbelievably good. Like genuinely, I don't think I've seen a tank as good at this level. But we get Princess down, and again, sadly, no ring or bracers. We then jump down again to take down Rotgrip, and once again, no boots. However, I am told this axe is quite good for leveling a warrior. And you'll never guess what I did after this run. Yup, another princess run. So we take her down, and no bracers. Jump down to Rotgrip, no boots. And in case you haven't seen my raiding videos, this is usually how my loot luck goes. Fortunately though, this group decided that they wanted to do another run, so of course I stayed. So we get to Princess, and we DPS her down, and this time she did actually drop the Blackstone ring. Now here's the thing about the ring. Yes, it would be insanely good for us, but it's not pre-base, and to be honest, I would just feel bad if I was to steal it from the warrior or the rogue. So I ended up just passing it to them. So once again, we jumped down to Rotgrip, and well, the boots dropped, which I most definitely was not going to pass on, and we won it. Definitely the best one we've had so far loot-wise, but obviously, doing this over and over again, it gets very repetitive, and to be honest, we'd only gotten like half of a level. So I decided to take a little break and head over to Azshara. Azshara is a bit of a weird one. The zone both looks and feels amazing to quest in, however, there is only 2 quests. Now I know that there are some repeatable quests, but honestly, I'm not sure if those are really worth doing. The first quest we had to do was kill 6 apparitions and 6 lichlings, which was as easy as it sounds. Run around a bit and kill spirits. Easy done. However, the next quest was a massive pain in the ass. We needed to kill Haldar, Fellsworn, Tricksters, and Satyrs. Now the issue that I had with this quest is that there were hundreds of Tricksters and Fellsworn running around, and they were respawning quite quickly too. But the Satyrs on the other hand, just didn't seem to exist. I ran around for 20 minutes trying to find more than 2, and well, 30 minutes later, I was finally able to get it done and then turn in the quest. And sadly, that was it. Like I said, there were repeatable quests in the zone, but I wasn't sure if those were worth doing or not. So, I just let them be. Besides, I still kind of wanted to get those Maraudon quests done anyway, so I began flying my way back to Desolus. After a good 30-ish minutes of waiting, I was able to form a party for a full run of Maraudon, which means this time we're going to be starting at the orange side of the instance. So we quickly picked up the quest along the way and began clearing our way through the entrance. First boss is Noxian. Loot-wise, nothing really interesting, however he does have a mechanic though, where he splits off into 3 smaller versions of himself, and we have to take those down first before Noxian reassembles himself. Pretty cool. The second boss is Razorlash, and he is significantly more interesting. He can drop us the Phyto Skin Spaulders. 16 agility would definitely last us till max level. Sadly though, he only gave us some boots. We then went all the way around to the purple side, where we once again fought Lord Viletongue, and again he can drop us those insane leggings, which he did not. We then once again went to take down Celebrus the Cursed, same as last time, except we now had the quest. We follow him over to this altar looking thing and he casts a spell or something, and we each have to individually click the book, which allows us to complete the quest and claim the Scepter of Celebrus, which is obviously used for entering through the portal. We then jump down the waterfall and continue the run like we had many times already. However, this time we went all the way down to the right side where we found and killed Tinkerer Gizlock. Again, not really any loot that we care about, but I suppose it's a bit of extra XP. The other difference this time is that we went all the way up to Landslide, and his loot really isn't all that great except for the Rock Grip Gauntlets, which wouldn't be a massive upgrade by any means, but an upgrade is still an upgrade. And surprisingly, he does actually drop it, and we do win it. So no complaints there. Second to last is of course Princess. Same as every other time, no bracers. And of course we stopped by Rotgrip, who actually did drop the boots again. And that was it. Finally, we had completed a full quest run of Maraudon and could now turn in the quest, which just so happens to push me over into level 51, which means it is time to go to my all-time favourite zone in the entire game. Like many others, my favourite zone is Un'Goro. What is there not to like? The zone is bright with the natural atmosphere that has been created with the grass and the plants. Nice little streams of water running through the entire zone, and in a way this zone feels like it's isolated because the trees cover the sky with their thick leaves, and the zone is so natural it feels like it's been untouched. Lore wise, I don't know how true that last statement is, but my opinion still stands. I excitedly flew to Gadgetzan and began running into Un'Goro, and almost immediately I am stopped by an NPC called Torwa Pathfinder, offering 2 quests, one for now and one for later. I also stopped by this crashed raft for a quick quest that would have us diving for a small pack that we then needed to return to its owner. I then did Torwa's first quest that wanted a piece of a dinosaur carcass, and I then returned that to him and accepted the next quest, which I don't think I've ever been able to complete before because I couldn't figure out what it was that I needed to do. However, the quest does say something about eggs, which I found. Turns out the quest mob only spawns once you stand on top of the eggs, and honestly, I can't believe it's taken me 4 characters to figure that one out. So I completed that and returned it to Torwa, and then began making my way north and towards Marshall's Refuge. Now we had a lot, and I mean a lot of quests to get done here, which honestly I'm perfectly fine with because I just love the zone that much. So first off, I began moving down at the right hand side of the zone in search of these giant mutant plants. We needed to collect 15 blood pens petals from them. Originally, I thought it was just a kill quest, but after murdering about 40 of them, I realized that something wasn't quite right. I also needed to collect 8 webbed Dimetrodon scales. Luckily though, there were hundreds of these things roaming around the zone, all of varying levels. So whilst I was doing other things, I could keep killing these at the same time. And since I had somehow ran all the way down here, I made a quick stop at the Ungoro bug hive. And using the feign death, face pull everything strategy, I was able to make it all the way inside. And we simply needed to collect a sample of the hive's wall. And again, since I was down here, I decided to slay some of the pterodaxes. And I think this was the only annoying quest in the entire zone. Only because they spawned in just 3 separate spots with only about 2 mobs in each. But other than it just taking a bit of time, it was completely fine. I then moved to the west side of the zone to kill the other kind of pterodax and to continue my rampage on the Dimetrodon population. However, over here the mobs were a little bit higher than me, so honestly I didn't stay here for longer than I needed to, which was quite a while to be fair. The other thing I was kind of passively doing was picking up the power crystals, since we needed 7 of each colour. But eventually, my quest log was looking pretty much completed, except for a quest called Roll the Bones. This one honestly felt kind of broken. We simply needed 8 dinosaur bones, which sounds perfectly normal for World of Warcraft. However, they never wanted to drop. Like, I mean never. I must have killed at least 100 of these things before I got all 8. Before I turned in, I also went up to Fireplume Ridge to get the quest there, which honestly I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do since the elementals are so much higher level than I was. However, using my feign death, face pull everything strategy, we were able to get all the way to the top and complete the quest. And that's also when I got a message from my friend Aloons, asking if I wanted to do the elite quest with him, and well, obviously I said yes. So I headed over there and we could summon Lark Orwee, and I thought this quest would be way harder than it actually was because we just absolutely demolished this thing. And well, we were both here and we were both leveling, so we decided to stick together for a while and to complete absolutely everything there is to do in Ungoro. So we made our way back up to Fireplume Ridge and we started the escort quest. And this was incredibly efficient for me since we were escorting him right back to where I needed to turn in. And this quest was just like every other escort, except on this one, the little goblin would occasionally just die on the spot and we had to then revive him. And after a good 10 minutes of running, we finally made it back to Marshall's Refuge. And I get to experience the euphoric sensation that is turning in like 10 quests at once. But after turning in, we still had a chunk of quests to do, so we decided to just get all of them done. And to start that off, we went into Gorilla Cave to kill gorillas, but also to turn in and pick up another quest. Unfortunately though, for that quest, we needed to turn in a mithril casing, which obviously neither of us had, so we skipped over it for now, and went back down south to Torwa to turn in the gorilla quest. And in perfect WoW Classic fashion, we had to then go straight back to Gorilla Cave. But before we did that, we did a lap of the entire zone to scout the 3 coloured pylons, which we then immediately turned in, and not long before this, we hit level 52, which is big for us because we could now unlock aimed shot, a crucial part of the classic hunter's rotation. And since we were going back to Gorilla Cave anyway, I sent us both a mithril casing from my main character so we could turn in whatever that quest inside was. Sadly though, my stupid ass didn't record the first gorilla quest, but all we had to do really was kill a mini boss called Ucha. Simple. But after turning in the mithril casing, we then started an escort quest. There was no special gimmick with this one, to be honest, unless you were counting the 3 times that he decided to just ignore the mobs and continue running to Marshall's Refuge. After that, we headed back to Fireplume Ridge for the last time to do a quest that Aloons had shared with me. We simply needed to kill some of the fire elementals and loot ash from them. Not too much to say about that, to be honest. And that was us finished. We had done pretty much every single quest in the entire zone. However, there was still one thing that we hadn't done within the zone. Aloon's profession choice was skinning, and what is one of the most iconic ways to make gold as a skinner? Devilsaur leather, of course. So we decided to try and take one down. And you know how it is, we honestly didn't think that we would do it at first. But Gerald, being Gerald, almost single-handedly demolished this freak. So thank you for the session, Aloons. It was a lot of fun, and we managed to get a lot of progression together. Logging on to play the following day, we really only had one zone left to quest in, well for now at least, and that would be Felwood, which is a pretty important zone, being home to the Songflower buff, but also Fellcloth and Demonic Runes, and having a pretty lucrative herbalism route. There wasn't an abundance of quests though, however the ones that were here would take quite a while to complete each, so I was prepared for a good few hours of questing, which would hopefully get me to level 53. So I started off this zone in the same way that everybody else does, by paying a visit to the Deadwood humanoid bear freaks. And every time I've done this quest before, I always struggle to locate the Deadwood Pathfinders. However, this time was probably the smoothest it has ever gone for me. We managed to slay every mob we needed pretty quickly, and we didn't get ganked by a full party of Horde even once. Isn't that just impressive? And since it was right here, I decided to quickly turn in the quest before moving deeper into the zone until I came across the Jadefire boys. Now these mobs are great. Not only will they provide me with a nice big chunk of XP, but they also have the chance to drop Fellcloth, which sells pretty well in the auction house. And they can also drop Demonic Runes, and well, Demonic Runes always come in handy. So I quickly killed the mini boss Zavarthus, and once again began moving north until I reached the Jadenar cultists. I think that's what they are anyway. And I went down into this underground bunker looking thing, and the mobs in here were super tightly packed and were honestly pretty hard to pull, and we almost died like 4 times. But in the end, I was able to clear out the entire thing and complete the quest. I then did what was probably the shortest quest of them all. Simply, we had to scout one of these Fellfire craters in the ground and then slay 4 elementals. Very simple. Next up was the Blood Amber quest. This was also incredibly simple. We had to loot 15 Blood Ambers, which normally would take a while since these types of quests usually like to make the drop chance like 4%. However, for these, the drop chance was 100%, which I'm not complaining about. After that, I of course turned in the quest, and unfortunately, there was only one follow-up quest, and that was to once again take out the Jadefire, but this time it was the bigger, scarier ones. However, when I got there, I quickly took out Zavarik for his flute quest, and that was all I was able to do, because this spot was swarming with level 60s. I even swapped layer and there was still full parties running around. So unfortunately, I really had no choice but to leave it alone for now, and instead went up to the Timbermaw area for another one of the weird bear killing quests. And at first, I really didn't think that it was going to be possible since all of the mobs were 3 and 4 levels higher than I was. However, Hunter might actually be the most broken leveling class, because we literally had 0 issues killing these guys. Every other class I've played so far, you at least had to be careful when killing higher level stuff, but Hunter just says no to all that and cuts down literally everything. Excitingly though, we actually found an epic BOE off of one of these mobs. I'm still not entirely sure if this is good, but it's purple. Now after turning that quest in, we were literally sitting on the edge of level 52, and I knew that turning in one more quest would be enough to tip us over into level 53. So I decided to run through into Winterspring, where I was able to find Donova Snowden to turn in a quest, which luckily got us to level 53. I hope you all enjoyed today's video because I enjoyed making it, I always do. Hunter is super fun. I'm really enjoying playing it. No idea what I'm going to do with it at max level, apart from, you know, the one thing. But remember, subbing and liking really does go a long way. It helps to push the video out. The other thing I'd like to say is I've had quite a few people ask me, basically for the first time ever, when's the next video, when's the next video? So the schedule has changed slightly. For anyone who really pays that much attention, the schedule used to be 1 video every 5 days, but now is 1 video every 8 to 9 days instead. And that's obviously because I've started making the videos longer, and as we get to the higher levels, obviously leveling up does take longer. The other thing is, in about a month's time from now, I will be trying a different kind of video. And no, it doesn't have anything to do with the post that I made 2 days ago. It's still WoW related, but it is a completely different style and format to the usual kinds of videos that I make. Well, I think that's everything. So I think that's enough yapping for today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.